Okay, I think we're on chapter 6 now. Okay, dinner at 8. Oswald had been unable to avoid running into Frances Cleaverton since she lived right next door, and finally agreed to have dinner at her house the next week. After all, he could not hurt her feelings. She had been responsible for his coming to Lost River in the first place. Frances's house was a neat blue bungalow. It was very nice inside as well, with a completely pink kitchen, pink stove, icebox, and sink, right down to the pink and white tiles on the floor. Frances showed him her prize gravy boat collection, and Mildred, whose hair, to Frances's dismay, was now the color of root beer, remarked, "I'll never understand why anybody in their right mind would collect gravy boats." Although Oswald had not wanted to go that night, the food was delicious, especially the macaroni and cheese. After dinner, they played a good game of gin rummy. Do not know how to play cards. Uh, However, much to her sister's disappointment, Mildred did nothing to help things along in the romance department. All she did all night was crab and complain about everything under the sun, including how much she hated that bird Roy had up at the store. And in between her complaints about Jack, she managed to tell several blue jokes that Oswald laughed at. Frances smiled, but was secretly horrified and wanted to strangle her sister. How was she ever going to get a man? A perfectly good dinner wasted as far as she was concerned. The next day, true to form, Mildred was back down at the store fussing at Jack, who fluttered around her head. She said, "You've heard about the 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie? Well, mister, I'm going to bake one big redbird pie if you don't quit pestering me." Roy laughed. "You better watch out, boy, or she'll have you for dinner one day." Despite all her complaints, Roy liked Mildred a lot. He got a kick out of her now and then, and how she was always dyeing her hair different colors. Besides, as Oswald had just found out, she sure could tell a joke. After just a few weeks, Oswald found that he was beginning to get into a routine. Every morning after breakfast, he would go to the store, hang around a while, and then go down to the dock to smoke cigarettes and wait for Claude Underwood to come by with the mail. He didn't dare smoke in Betty's house. As he sat waiting, sometimes for an hour or two, he saw that the river was full of things he had never seen before. All kinds of large birds, loons, and egrets, geese, and ducks of all different kinds swam up and down the river. A few swam in pairs, but most were in flocks that took off together and landed in the water together. One day, while he was waiting, Oswald noticed a black duck out in the river all by himself and wondered about it. Why did this one lone duck not swim with a mate or with the flock? Did the duck even know he was supposed to be with the others? What had caused the duck to separate from the rest? The more he watched it out there, swimming around, the sadder it made him. He realized he was just like that duck. All his life he had been out in the world alone, while the rest of the world swam by, happy in their own little flock, knowing who they were and where they belonged. Oswald was feeling a little sad these days anyway. Christmas was just around the corner, and Betty was already playing Christmas carols on the radio. He supposed it put some people in a good mood, but all those "I'll be home for Christmas" and "There's no place like home for the holidays" songs just made him feel lousy. For him, Christmas had always been a season with everything set up just to break your heart. As a kid, all he had ever gotten were cheap toys handed out by a bunch of once-a-year do-gooders. Toys by the next day were either broken or stolen. Even as an adult, when he had spent the holidays with Helen's family, it had just made him feel more of an outsider than ever. Each year was the same. All her brothers and sisters would sit around looking at home movies and reminiscing about their wonderful childhood Christmases. No, Christmas for him had always been like someone shining a great big spotlight down in that dark, empty space inside him, and the only way he had been able to handle it in the past was to get drunk. A hangover was nothing compared to feeling all alone in a room full of people. This year he would be spending what could turn out to be his very last Christmas on the river with the birds and ducks. That, he guessed, was better than nothing. The next time Oswald went into the store, He found himself eyeing the cartons of beer stacked over in the corner and was almost headed over there, but when Betty Kitchen came in, he decided to stick to his original plan and asked Roy if there was some kind of book he could get so he could try and figure out what kinds of birds and ducks he was looking at. Roy said, "Come on back in the office with me. I think I have something for you." The office was a mess, with stacks of papers and old ledgers and Jack's toys everywhere, but Roy rummaged through the pile on the floor and handed Oswald a ripped paperback copy of Birds of Alabama, a Birdwatcher's Guide. "May I borrow this?" asked Oswald. "Oh, hell, you can have it. I don't need it." Oswald took the book up to his room. While he was thumbing through, he found an old postcard from 1932 that described Lost River as a magical spot, invisible from the highway by reason of its location in masses of shade trees along the winding banks of the river, where it lies in a setting of flowers and foliage and songbirds, like a dream of beauty ready for the brush and canvas of the landscape painter. That's the damn truth, he thought. It would be a great place for a painter or a bird watcher. Then it dawned on him that he, Oswald T. Campbell, was actually studying to become a bird watcher. Bird watching was certainly not one of the things he ever thought would have put on his things to do list. As a matter of fact, he had never even had a things to do list, and now it was almost too late to do anything. Oh well, he thought, live and learn. Better late than never. And then he wondered why in the hell he was thinking in cliches. From that day on, after he had gone down and had a cup of coffee with Roy and shot the breeze with him for a while, he would take his birdwatcher's guide and go down to the river and try to match the birds he was seeing with the pictures in the book. So far, he had identified a great blue heron that cracked him up by the way it walked. It picked its feet up and down as if it were stepping on molasses. He had seen cranes, a snowy egret, mallards, wood ducks, and a belted kingfisher, and by December 19th he had already identified his first bladed woodpecker. He was hoping to see an osprey one of these days. On the morning of December 22nd, when Oswald walked over to the store for coffee with Roy, he saw that huge cedar tree outside the community hall had been decorated with hundreds of Christmas ornaments and silver and gold tinsel. When he went into... No! Stupid phone. Threw me off. Okay, when he went to the store, he asked Roy who had done it. Roy shook his head. "We don't know. Every Christmas it happens overnight and nobody knows who did it. But I have my theories. I think it's that bunch of crazy women that do it." "Who?" "Oh, Frances, Mildred, and Dottie. Probably Betty Kitchen is in on it too. I can't prove it, but I'll tell you this. Anytime you see all of them wearing polka dots on the same day, watch out." Just then the door opened and Frances Cleaverton walked in looking sunny and cheerful. "Well, good morning, Mr. Campbell," she said with a smile. "How are you getting along?" "Oh, fine," he said. "I hope you're coming to the annual Christmas Eve dinner at the community hall. Roy's coming, aren't you? We're going to have a lot of good food." Roy said, "I'll be there. Hey, Frances, have you seen the tree yet?" He winked at Oswald as she turned around and looked across the street. "Well, for heaven's sake," she said, feigning surprise. "When did that happen?" "Last night." Frances turned to Oswald. "Last year, the same exact thing happened on the 23rd. I just wish I knew who was doing it." "Yeah, me too," said Roy. "I was just telling Mr. Campbell it's a mystery, all right." Walking back home, Frances was so pleased. The polka dots had done it again. Frances and Betty Kitchen had started the club 12 years ago, and the founding members, after herself and Betty, were Sybil Underwood and later Dottie Nivens and Mildred. They had named themselves after the Mardi Gras group over in Mobile because they wanted to have fun and as well as do good works. And thanks to Dottie Nivens and her amazing ability to make delicious highballs, which they drank out of polka-dotted martini glasses every meeting, they did have fun. When their friends Elizabeth Shivers over in Lillian heard about it, she started another secret society, the Mystic Order of the Royal Dotted Swiss. They also did a lot of good work, but Frances was convinced that they could never top the Mystery Tree Caper.